Arriba!
Magnificent Mike? Really? Wow, you're gonna have to work a lot harder to impress the goddess of WWE, Alexa Bliss. Sorry, Mike.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Monte The Pharaoh, Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast, and actually starting to pick up a lot of momentum nationwide thanks to gentlemen that, like we have in studio right now, and gentlemen we just had in the studio less than a half an hour ago.
Yep.
Ex-rocker and WWE superstar Marty Jannetty. At the board, we had a little bit of a change. We have the studio director, Stephen Miller. Thank you, Miller.
Hey,
Mr.
The
Miller.
Pharaoh, how are we?
All right.
What's going
Are we a
on?
little more calm?
A little more calm. A stressful morning
Nope.
already.
Woo!
I'm not calm. Nope.
Woo!
And to my right is the star of the show, Jimmy Pharaoh. Jimmy.
Hello, everybody out there in TV land. Back at it again.
And we have another superstar, WWE, WCW, ECW superstar, and future Hall of Famer. Have at it there, Jimmy.
Oh, boy. I better collect my wind now because this resume is insane. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest today, born Troy Allen Martin, November 21st, 1964, American professional wrestler and promoter, better known by the ring name Shane Douglas. He is best known for his tenures in ECW, World Championship Wrestling, World Wrestling Federation, and also TNA, where he worked as a wrestler and a manager. He was born in New Brighton, Pennsylvania. His residence is currently in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, alongside, I think, the great Dominic DeNucci.
Yes.
I might be right about that. Okay. 2 children. 2 kids. Excellent. Professional wrestling career. What?
It's like you're surprised.
Yeah, well, I didn't know. I'm learning now.
Okay.
Professional wrestling career, known in on multiple ring names over the course of his career. Of course, predominantly Shane Douglas, but Dean Douglas. This is interesting. Mike Kelly, the franchise, of course. Troy Martin, Troy Orndorff. Ooh, I'd like to ask about that a little later. Okay, build height 6'1", weight 244. Trained by Dominic DeNucci. The championships, I'll probably be here all day, but let's see what we got. American Pro Wrestling Alliance World Heavyweight Champion. Atlantic Terror Championship Wrestling Championship 1 time. Big Time Wrestling Champion 2 times. Blue Water Championship Wrestling Championship 1 time. Border City Wrestling Championship Heavyweight Champion 1 time. Boasted Knuckle Pro Wrestling Championship 1 time. Okay, and then we get to ECW, where, of course, this is where I fell in love with the franchise. I thought he was the greatest. ECW World Heavyweight Champion 4 times. World Television Champion 2 times. NWA World Heavyweight Champion. NWA World Title Tournament. Hardcore Hall of Fame, class of 2014. Oh, my God, man. Major League Wrestling World Heavyweight Championship 1 time. This is insane. What else we got here? H2O Wrestling Hardcore Hustle Organization Heavyweight Championship, International Wrestling Association Heavyweight Championship, North American Wrestling Alliance Heavyweight Championship, Pro Championship, PCW Heavyweight Champion. Mike, this is ridiculous.
Show's over.
It kind of is. It kind of is. Pro Wrestling All-Stars of Detroit Heavyweight Championship. What don't you win? Pro Wrestling Illustrated. PWI ranked them 20 of the 500 best singles back in 96. 118 of the 500 best singles back in 2003. Number 82 of the 100 PWI years top 100 with Ricky Steamboat in 2003. As far as tag teams go,
Breathe, Pharaoh,
this
breathe.
is, I can't.
Holy
This is insane. I mean, it just keeps going and going. World Championship Wrestling, WCW United States Heavyweight Championship, World Tag Team 2 times with Ricky Steamboat and Buff Bagwell. World Tag Team Championships in the NWA with Ricky Steamboat. World Tag Team Title Tournament with Buff Bagwell. He's even getting Buff Bagwell a rub. What's going on here?
Yeah, that's for sure, right?
Oh, my God. Okay, and of course, World Wrestling Federation, where we got a blink of the Intercontinental Championship, the former Intercontinental Champion. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the ECW legend, the franchise, Shane freaking Douglas.
I appreciate
Oh my God, I'm exhausted, bro.
You know, in addition to all those things,
There was more. I ran out of air. I'm
I
sorry.
was also a Cub Scout. So, yeah, and
All right, you're definitely.
Wow.
I did it all.
That's great. I wasn't. They wouldn't let me in. Oh my God.
Wait a minute. I think I read here he cured cancer.
Yeah. Are you serious? Did he?
He discovered America.
Discovered America.
Just the eastern part.
Just the eastern part.
The western part was
Is he
somebody else.
responsible for
He
Sasha-
settled in Pittsburgh.
Is he responsible for Sasha Banks' tush? Because we're big fans on this
If
show.
you were
I'm
a big
sorry.
fan,
Yeah.
then.
Hey,
Disclaimer, you
yeah,
know.
hey.
Mike, what do you got for him, man? I need it.
All right, Shane. So after all that, how does this even start? How do you decide, hey, man, I want to be a pro wrestler?
It's funny because I had never really planned on being a pro wrestler. I mean, when Mick Foley and I were training at Dominic's school, I had met Dominic whenever I was in 8th grade. My friends and I had built a backyard wrestling ring because we had seen a kid that had gotten his picture in Pro Wrestling Illustrated. And it was a really crappy looking ring. And we thought, we can do better than that. So we did. We went and collected up this stuff, built this really nice looking ring. And after a few weeks of messing around in it, didn't know what else to do with it. And back then, they used to have the Labor Day telethon for Jerry Lewis, for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. And they used to ask the kids to put on like backyard carnivals to raise $10-15 to send in. So I said, let's do a backyard wrestling show. So we were the original backyard wrestlers. Started this show, we promoted it. We ended up drawing about $250 worth that we ended up sending in. But the reason for that was the woman, and I always like to make sure I mention her. She's long since passed away, but her name was Angeline Paparella. She was the local chairwoman of the Muscular Dystrophy Association chapter in my hometown. And when we went to meet with her, she had been a nurse who had contracted adult onset muscular dystrophy and was completely immobile except for a few fingers. And to see how courageously that woman fought with just those fingers, it was, I mean, I get goosebumps even like when I think about her because she was such a courageous woman. And she called me up one day and she said, there's a wrestler that lives locally. It's an Italian guy. Well, we knew Bruno, right? And I said, Bruno Sammartino? And she said, no, it's not Bruno. And she fumbled around with the names. She said, it's something like Dean and Nani Dominuni. I said, Dominic DiNucci? He and Bravo were the world tag champs at the time in WWF. And she said, that's it. He said that he doesn't know if he's going to be in town, but if he is that day, he may be able to stop by. So that's where Dominic and I struck up our friendship. He did show up that day, and I think in large part helped us draw that money for that. And he and I have been friends ever since.
Wow.
And that's how we started training. But to be honest with you, I know it sounds like sort of, like I'm trying to like make a storyline or something. But Mick and I didn't think we were good enough to go on the road. You know, like if you watching Bret Hart and Perfect and Jake Roberts and all these guys on TV, those guys are phenomenal. You know, we're okay at it for this level, but those guys were phenomenal. And so we never really planned on it. And it wasn't until Dominic was running shows in the Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia area with Bill Watts' UWF. He had set up like 4 or 5 matches. Eddie Gilbert and Missy Hyatt, Dark Journey, Missing Link, Terry Taylor, Chris Adams, Bill Irwin, Buddy Roberts. There was a pretty good contingency of talent. And in Clarksburg, West Virginia, Mick and I always were on first. Dominic would always put us on the curtain jerk. And after the match, Eddie Gilbert and Terry Taylor pulled us outside of the Dathan Goth Arena in Clarksburg and said, have you guys ever thought about going on the road? And that was where the idea came from. And even then, when Eddie called me a few weeks later to go on the road, I had just graduated college and had always planned on using my degree in government and going in some capacity. And here we are, 30 and a whole bunch of years later, and never used my degree.
How many years did you backyard wrestle before you wound up in Dominic's training? And how much relearning did you have to do? You probably thought in that over those backyard years, I know what I'm doing. And then you get to a real trainer.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, we had 3 shows, 8th grade, 9th grade, and I think 11th grade. We put on shows to raise money for different. One was for a class. The class, the class. What do they call it? you're like the class president to raise money for the class.
Right.
And then the two others. So we'd only done those 3 shows, and in hindsight, looking back at it, when I see how kids today set their matches up, it was pretty much what we did back then. We had scripted out the matches, then we practiced them over and over again, because we did not go out and execute a match. But going into Dominic's school, very well aware that I didn't know anything that this guy was going to teach me, and Dominic was regarded in the business as one of the very good technicians, very solid, and so that's where he started with us, getting us in there. And he didn't, when we got there, he didn't say, hey, you guys, we're okay at doing this stuff, now I'm going to teach you this other stuff. He started all of us, Mick, every one of his students, we were all taught the same way, amateur wrestling style. We weren't allowed, I think, for about 6 months into the ring. It's when you're a kid, right? You're sitting there, ring's right there, you're dying to get into the ring, and instead you're on the mats over here for 6 months. But Dominic was adamant about that, and in hindsight was perfectly well taught.
You always hear these stories about these pro wrestling trainers taking advantage of their students, and it seems like Dominic was a straight shooter, huh?
Absolutely. I heard stories of some of the others like you're talking about. No, he was very clearly in charge. You'd get on the mat with him and try your ass off to compete against him, and he would just play with you until he was done, and take you right down. He had a very, very solid amateur background, but he never took advantage of us. To the contrary, like in my case, he knew that I couldn't afford to pay, and he never asked me for the money. And I was sort of embarrassed about it, so I went and pulled him aside one time, and he said, "Did I ask you for money?" And I said, "No." But he said, "If I want money from you, I'll ask you for money."
Wow.
But instead, he gave me the key to the gym, and I would go there early and turn the lights on and the heat and clean up and everything. So fair trade for me. So yeah, Dominic, true gentleman, just one of the nicest guys.
Believed in you.
Yeah, all of us.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Shay, I want to get something out of the way, because we met you. You came to a signing of ours a little less than a year ago, and both of us came out feeling about you that you're just a straight, honest,
thank you,
caring person, and you could tell that. It's good to hear you talk about Dominic DiNucci that way also.
Oh, he's like, not that I needed a second dad. I had a fantastic dad, but Dominic is like a second father to me because of what he taught me in the business, but that we've been friends for, God, since I was 12, 13 years old. He's just a phenomenal human being. He just turned 87 years old. He'll kill me for saying that.
Yeah, he's like slowing down on the clock there.
Yeah. 87 years old and still.
Yeah. He was with you when we met Shane.
Yeah.
He brought Dominic with him. What is your relationship like with your father in the past? I know he's gone now.
Yeah.
He was a vet?
Yeah, he was a World War II vet. My grandparents were immigrants that had come out, my paternal grandparents, that had come over from Sweden in around 1914, 1915. And my dad was born there when they came here. He was an infant. Fought in World War II. Stayed in the reserves until 1964, the year I was born, and then worked 40-something years on the railroad, Penn Central, then Conrail, retired from there. My mom and dad were divorced before I was even born, I think, or when she was maybe pregnant with me. And
did you know your mom?
Oh yeah,
did?
yeah.
Okay.
Mom and dad, they just didn't get along very well.
Gotcha.
But we were. Every weekend we'd go to my dad's and spend the weekend with my dad's and vacations and things. And my dad, being a World War II vet, that generation, very strict, certain way of doing things, only one way, the right way, his way. But there was a lot to be learned from that. It was tough at times as a kid, but everything my dad taught me was for the right reason. Structure, and he discipline. Yeah, and he loved me. He loved us and knew what he wanted the best for us.
So how do you present to your dad, like, hey Dad, I'm gonna want to be a professional? How did that go?
Yeah, well, Dominic just told me about 6 months ago, and I'd never heard this story before. We were sitting at his house, and he looked out his window to the driveway, and he said, your mom and dad were standing right down there when they came to talk to me about you getting into wrestling. My mom and dad had never told me that story. They were very concerned. Their son had, you can imagine both of them, first kid in the family to go to college, and now suddenly he's going to go do this and not use his degree. They were a little bit turned off about it.
So
And
they went to go visit Mr. Maeda from Karate Kid?
yeah,
Basically?
pretty
Wow.
much, yes.
And he passed the test with them.
Yeah,
Dominic.
Dominic told,
They
they
almost didn't have the franchise.
their whole thing was basically like, make sure that he's doing the right thing. Don't allow him to get taken advantage of, that sort of thing. And so, it was there. It was always there. I always had the degree. I've taught several times. Taught for 7 years. So I did use my degree, not to the extent that I thought I would, but as a kid that grew up watching wrestling and loved it. I just was one of those guys that just, I was a total mark for the business. I loved the business. And then growing up in Pittsburgh and the connection with Bruno, and, in Pittsburgh before the Penguins got good, we had the Pirates, we had the Steelers, obviously, and you had Bruno Sammartino. They were the triumvirate of sports in Pittsburgh. So knowing that we had Dominic training us, and my dad was a pretty good wrestling fan. He knew Dominic's background. He knew that he was no goofball or whatever. No schemer.
He's qualified.
Qualified, sure.
Unbelievable. So let me ask you this, Dominic. I don't know. I wouldn't consider Dominic probably the best on the mic during his time.
That's an understatement. Yeah.
Right, so
I'm not sure if he did that much.
I'm trying to gladly come
I'm trying to think of a Danucci promo. I'm coming up.
He would agree with that. He's
Okay.
one of the famous lines that he had, not to cut you off, but one of the famous lines he had when he was wrestling in San Francisco for Roy Shires was they had a cage match coming up, but for the promo at the TV station they didn't have any steel cage, so they went and got chicken wire and holding it up in front of the camera, and Roy Shires told me, said, whatever you do, don't call it chicken wire. It's a steel cage. So Dominic gets into the promo and he says, it might look like a chicken wire, but it's not a chicken wire.
It's a stale cage.
Yeah.
Good comment, Dominic.
Yeah.
So, what do you feel makes a great professional wrestler? Mic skills or mat skills? I understand you need both.
Yeah.
What is the most important?
Which you had, by the way.
Thank you. They really are a compendium, because I think we see a lot of people that are really good on the mic, and today we know now that it's all scripted, right, and they're reading off a teleprompter, and that we can get in.
I hate
Oh, it's awful.
I can't take
Well, it precludes them from ever learning their character.
Sure.
Troy Martin is not the franchise. He's not Shane Douglas. I play that character on TV. But I can tell you how that character thinks. I can tell you what kind of beer he would drink, how he'd vote in the next election, because I've played him so long and I've voiced him from here and here. If I was reading a script and you asked me what kind of beer would the franchise drink, my question would be, what does the script say? How would he vote in the next election? What is it? Writers, what do you say?
So we have our opinion about that. Why do you think that's how wrestling was guided to go to scripted interviews or?
Yeah, I mean,
whatever?
we could do a college course on this. For some reason, Vince McMahon doesn't seem like he appreciates wrestling the way the rest of us do, the way wrestling fans do. And there are always a number of guys that were not great on the mic, like Dominic. Fantastic in the ring, technician out his ass, but couldn't talk very well on camera, in part because of the language barrier, etc. So for somebody like that, if I'm going to hire 100 wrestlers, and knowing that 10 or 15 or 20 of them may not be as good on the mic, I can fix that now if I just have everybody read a script. And again, to me it comes off looking very amateur, because I've always said this, we're not great actors. If I was an actor, maybe The Rock is. If I was a great actor, I'd probably be in Hollywood making movies right now. But I can play a wrestler. That's very close to who I am as far as with my athletic background and what I've learned. So as soon as you tell me to start reading a teleprompter or a script, memorizing a script, whatever, you've taken my creativity and shut it off. It's now everything you guys want to create for me. And it's hard for me to, maybe for the younger kids it's different the way they've learned. For me, I need to be able to sink my teeth into it. I have to have a feel of input to it. Or if it's not mine, why give a shit about it?
Well, our opinion is, guys like yourself, the list goes on and on. The superstar becomes bigger than the organization, right? You could talk about the regional days where guys were free to lose control of their regions, and
Yeah.
there were reasons behind that. But our opinion, at least our opinion, is keep them scripted, you keep them under control. If a guy says something that gets hot, all of a sudden you lose control of that character. And again, I don't know if you're watching the product nowadays at all, but Daniel Bryan, for example, didn't want to go to Saudi Arabia. Obviously, you can't make him go.
Right.
But if you have your organization all hung up on that guy, they can make or break you at this point, right? So
Yeah.
We've discussed in the past, and I think it's a good point, that the last superstar that the WWE had who bounced his own ball and did what he wanted was basically Austin. And since then, in my opinion, I know you love him, we've got what I call Captain Processed, John Cena. I don't think anyone's going to ever be allowed to ever get as big as like an Austin again and write his own rules. That's it. I'm leaving.
Well, I agree with you. Kevin Sullivan, we travel on the road for so many decades. He always said that he believed Vince McMahon wanted to make the company the star. So that way, if like you're saying, instead of these guys all getting hot and I got to pay them through the nose, and then worry about New Japan coming and get them, or WCW back in the day, or AEW now today, the company's the star. So you want to go and leave, don't let the door hit you in the ass.
Well, back in the day when characters were stars on their own and came up and were allowed to speak freely with their character, you worked early on in the WWE with Macho Man. How was that?
Oh, it was intimidating. When you walk out of first of all, you're a young kid shitting in your pants, right? Because you're in a dressing room of some of the all-time great legends of wrestling. And then you're walking through the curtain into a building of 10, 15, 16,000 people who are all yelling, "You suck, you're a piece of garbage, go home," throwing stuff at you.
Did Macho make you feel comfortable?
Very.
He did.
Very, 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 very much so, which I didn't expect because of his character. You now realizing it, but back then you weren't sure if this is like really sort of who they are. And he came up to me and he asked me what moves I was good at, and I taught by Dominic to keep my mouth shut. So whatever you want, Randy. And he said, no, like tell me, kid. So I gave him a couple ideas, and he worked them into the match, and he got himself over. And afterwards, he came back and he thanked me and he said to me, "Always remember, kid, if you ever plan on having a career in this business, always make sure you thank the guy that put you over." And that really stuck at me. But the thing that blew my mind the most about Randy, though, was afterwards, on camera with Liz, right? He walks down the hall and he real lightly knocks on the door and goes, "Liz, honey, it's me, it's Randy." And I was like, come on, kick that damn door down, be the Macho Man.
Let me ask you that question, right? They have rumors saying that he used to lock her away when he went. Was that true?
No.
It wasn't any of that?
No, I mean, I don't know, maybe that might have happened somewhere on the road. Everything I'd seen up there in that little bit of time that I was there doing those jobs, he always seemed to be very respectful of her, very protective. I think there was probably a big part of it that was concerned about certain guys floating around the dressing room, and we've heard all of the other stories, right? But no, he in what I saw, again, in the short time that I was there for those jobs, it seemed to me that he treated her pretty respectfully and professionally.
Did you ever get your lines crossed? So you do this with Randy Savage and you want your input, and that's great. And you're like, holy cow, this is great. Then you go to the next guy and you're like, hey, by the way, I did that, kid. They're like, shut up, kid. Don't you tell me what to do.
No, I listen to everything. If somebody asked me, I would give my, if they would say, hey, what are you good at, like after Randy. But I was always concerned that you don't want to go up there seeming like you're the know-it-all kid, right? Because you sure as hell didn't know it all. And I knew that if I was going to learn my craft, these would be the guys that would teach it to me. And if I go up there and act like a hot shot or the smart ass or whatever, it's probably going to turn some of them off, and they may not teach me, when the time comes. On those first few occasions up there, the first night I worked with Randy, Jake, and Orndorff, all three incredibly professional. Bobby Heenan came back afterwards with Paul and told me the same thing Randy did. Make sure you always thank the guy you're working with, and kept putting me over for how I took the pile driver from Paul. That was great, kid. It was fantastic, that kind of stuff, and really made you feel comfortable there. Even though you're the low guy on the totem pole, those guys made you feel like you were part of the team in some small way.
That's great.
Paul was pretty brutal with those pile drivers.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah. You get dropped right on your head, basically.
No.
I mean, like some of those old school pile drivers are vicious compared to what you see today.
Yeah,
They
Paul.
don't even let them do it in general, but when they do, they
tuck them up like a couple of inches above there.
Sure.
You don't even hit the mat now.
Yeah, well, the fear, of the CTE now and neck injury and stuff. Paul was I think, an unheralded athlete. The football background and everything that he had, but he was a stud.
And he could fight in his sandals too.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a whole other story.
I think you always hear about the high talent or the stars taking advantage of, I don't want to say jobbers, but taking total advantage of it. It just doesn't seem like this was in your case, right?
No, I never had that. That same night, though, Mick Foley had worked with the British Bulldogs. My first match was with Randy. His first or second match was with the Bulldogs. And, there was a pretty good size. Mick's, 6'4", 6'5", pretty big guy. And Dynamite's 5'9", 5'10", maybe. He throws him in for the clothesline. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube, and hits him with a clothesline right across the jaw and broke his jaw. And Mick never complained, but I was astounded because I'm being treated, so appreciatively by Randy and Jake and Paul and Bobby Heenan. And here he is, walking around, he can barely talk. He's like trying to, he still has a couple more matches to go. And they never came back. They never thanked him for the match. They never apologized for the potato. So there were some guys that did that. And
It seems to me like early days for Mick, he's almost like a redheaded stepkid. What's going on here?
yeah,
he got a lot of harsh treatment. It sounds like, or indifference. Like seems that way.
And that example up there going to do jobs. So I think in the question you're asking, I didn't see that personally, but I did see it happen to other people. And I think it was more specific to the people that they were working with.
It's funny, the guy that you bring up is Dynamite Kid, who you read all the bad stories about him abusing people and hurting people.
Yeah.
It's sad to hear. It's sad to hear that guys like Randy Macho Man Savage and Paul Orndorff take care of the young because they know the future. These guys are the future of our sport. And there's guys like, and again, I don't know Dynamite Kid or didn't know him anyway, that he would do something like that.
They're out there.
I mean, it just doesn't make sense. But
all different kinds. At one point, you end up in WCW with Johnny Ace, John Laurinaitis, and I wanted to ask you about your issues with Jim Cornette. What do you got for us?
Jim and I, first of all, we go way back, right? I mean,
Jim Cornette.
Yeah, he.
How far back you go?
1987, 88. He was there. He was, very high up piece for NWA then, Jim Crockett Promotions. And when they first came up with the idea for Johnny and I to work with them, I think they were trying to expand out like something more for Jim than just the Midnight Express, and somehow it got twisted and contorted into that storyline. Jim and I have always gotten along well. There's a respect between us. We don't agree on much. Our politics are about as far apart from each other as you could possibly get.
I've heard his politics.
Gotcha. But he and I come from much in the same school when it comes to the business. The old school style, we'll probably say it in vastly different ways, but most of that we agree on.
Well, you have a filter.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the vastly different ways part. But go on.
But there was a time when before that angle with Johnny and I, where there was a match, and I want to say it was in Charlotte or somewhere around the Carolinas. I got to the building and I see on the run sheet that I'm working Jim Cornette that night on TV. Oh, how am I going to work Jim Cornette? That doesn't make sense. He's a manager and, a chicken shit manager, right?
Real good at it.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
Oh, man.
And he goes out and it was one of the things where he's all padded up and everything and, had the powder and had the gimmick and had this and had that. And, I wasn't, it didn't feel right to me. And I came back, and what really, set me off was when I came back and Gene Anderson was the old, stage, gorilla position guy for Jim Crockett Promotions. He looked real deadpan at me. He said, "That was the worst thing I ever seen." And that just blew my mind. Like, oh, where's Jim Cornette?
What, you guys have a little shouting match there or something?
No. It's just, it's just
what are you trying to do to me?
Not going to happen again.
Right.
It was one and done.
You did some tag matches with, oh boy, I love Brian Pillman. Pillman and Austin. dropping the belts. Did you think that they had the goods at the time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'd worked with Brian quite often as a singles at that same time. He was brought in a little bit behind me, and there was a lot of times that we would wrestle like on house shows and things. Brian had a real good head on his shoulders for the business, and was willing to throw it all, throw all caution to the wind. And Steve, especially when you put them together, there was just a chemistry between them. The bigger guy that could go, the smaller guy that could fly. There was just a really good chemistry between them. But what a lot of people may not be familiar with was that the original Hollywood Blondes, as envisioned by Bill Watts, was to be me and Brian Pillman.
Wow.
And
Nice.
I got called up to the office on a Saturday, which was very rare. In fact, it never happened to me before or after. And we had to be let into the building. The building was locked. The lights are all off at the office. And I walk into Bill's office, and he's sitting there, and he asks me, what do you think about turning heel on Ricky Steamboat? Well, what heel wouldn't love to work with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, right? I mean, one of the top 3 babyfaces, if not the top babyface of all time.
Bow.
But as I thought about it for a second, I went, because it was about 3 months into our run, I said, I don't think the fans will buy it yet. And he said, why not? I said, because it's still Ricky Steamboat and Shane Douglas. I'm not near his level yet. And he never answered me. He sat back in his desk and put his feet up on his, leaned back like this. And he said, I always knew you were going to be the one that picked it up. And that's where he told me the idea about Pillman and me, the Hollywood Blondes. And whenever I told that to him and basically turned it down, he said, Steve Austin's the next person for that position. Well, we won anyway because now we had a phenomenal team of guys to work with. Brian and Steve, they were 2 very different peas of the same pot, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
But their timing, both of them were impeccable. If you knew that Steve was supposed to be right here, he was right there. Not 2 inches this way or that way. And wherever Brian was meant to be, he would be. But very different beasts. It was a lot of fun to work with them.
They both had an edge to them, too.
Yes.
I think that's what ties them together, was that high-edge energy that they had, the unknown factor of both of them.
Absolutely. And what I liked about them was, tag teams, it was always like Johnny and I. They dress the same. They wear their hair the same, right? They do everything the same. These guys didn't look anything alike. Body types were different, although they were both in great shape. Brian had the long hair. Steve had the short hair. Just phenomenal guys to work with.
Steve actually had hair.
Yeah,
he actually had hair at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're a big guy.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel like you had to start hitting the gas?
No. When for me in the business, early in my career, you felt like I heard we had on earlier when Marty was here, it was like land of the giants.
Yeah.
You walk into the dressing room and my God, everybody's 9 feet tall and weighs 500 pounds.
And then there's Andre.
Yeah, and then there's Andre.
Right.
10 feet.
And then there's Andre.
There's Andre. Oh boy.
Everybody was just a monster. So you always felt like you're never going to be anywhere near those guys' size. But as you go, for me, I guess personally speaking, going into the business, once you start to move up that ladder, again, for me as a young guy in the business, I never thought champion one day of any kind, let alone world champion. I'm in the business. You first get your foot in the door and say it's going to be get in the ring in front of a live crowd, and then I can go home and say I've been a wrestler. Then you do that, and then the next thing is, well, hey, maybe I can work myself up a little bit and maybe help the company draw some money. And then once you get into that position, and then the company by that time starts to put you in those positions to draw money, and it keeps building. But I never ever saw myself to that peak level like that. But I knew if that was going to come, if there would be a possibility for that, I would have to look the part. You can't be a world champion and be 210 pounds.
Right.
At least you shouldn't. Right?
No, thank you.
Have you heard who's fighting for the belt this month at the Royal Rumble?
There you go.
He's 180 pounds.
Yeah,
but he's a demon. He's a demon. Careful. Oh, you might put on that demon makeup. Never mind. Oh my
so
lord.
you're heading that way
As
clearly in your
you're
career
saying.
as you're going.
Yeah,
so
my career is building. for me in ECW, it was sort of like a confluence of things that happened. Right at that time was when my ex-wife and I first started trying to have kids, and weren't successful. And so, for anybody that's ever been through infertility out there knows the first year they assume it's the guy. Well, all the tests kept coming back normal, and without getting into my personal stuff, everything was good and normal. But they did find that I had a very low testosterone count, and even though the sperm counts and everything were fine, but my testosterone was of an 8-year-old kid at 29, whatever, 29 or 30. So my doctor was prescribing me testosterone to supplement, with the gel, and as soon as I started taking it, back then I couldn't grow facial hair. If you go back and look at some of these pictures of me, like around 1990 and stuff with WWF or WCW and WA before that, my voice hadn't deepened up. It's like I hadn't hit puberty yet at 30. And as soon as they started giving me the testosterone, the facial hair came, the voice deepened up, and I was seeing results in the gym. If you go back, there's the first promo shot that they ever put out, Dean Douglas, which was 95. You can see I was killing myself in the gym. I'm soft and smooth. It wasn't like I was lazy in the gym. I was going 2-3 times a day sometimes, between cardio and working every night. As soon as I started doing the testosterone that was prescribed to me, the universal change.
Well, because I remember when you were with the dudes, and then all of a sudden you came to the WWE, right?
Yep.
As Dean Douglas, I'm like, shit, he's hitting the gas.
Yeah.
This dude turned into. At first, I didn't even recognize you. I'm
Yeah.
like, and I was like, holy shit, he hit the gas hard. I mean, you were in phenomenal shape.
But you know what? The funny thing is, like, you hear these stories. Some of these guys that were taking just obscene amounts of this stuff.
Yeah.
Having been accepted to medical school, I knew that this stuff was not something you wanted to play with. And my doctor obviously was always running tests. And, if you're taking too much, they're going to cut back. You had to keep your levels at a certain place. So I would cycle on it and off it, just like you're supposed to, like the package says.
Right.
And because my body wasn't making its own amount, its proper amount, by just taking that, first, even like with the andro gel, when I first started using that, you could see a pretty good change. But then whenever I went to the injectable, because the andro gel couldn't get it high enough, when I went to the injections, that was right around that time where the muscles, it popped on, my abs popped in.
But not even the look. How did you feel? Like mentally, did you feel better?
Much.
Right? It was like,
Yeah.
okay.
There was always when your test levels are low like that, you get run down really easy. You're always exhausted. You feel like the saying I would always say is you felt like you're like walking in mud.
Yeah.
Your legs feel heavy, and just that wasn't me. I was always going 96 different directions, and all of a sudden I'm feeling myself like I'm a 90-year-old guy, and it just didn't make sense to me until we started trying to have the baby, and then that was uncovered.
Okay. Let's go back to Pillman for a few seconds. Did Pillman have a drug problem back in the WCW days?
No, not that I ever saw. But understand, the wrestling dressing rooms back then were pretty wild places. When I was going to the WWF the first time to do those jobs, when I worked with Randy and Paul and Jake and all those guys, they were in the dressing room. One over here snorting cocaine, one over there shooting something. Everybody was doing something.
Everybody's just like a madhouse.
And where I came from, with one red light in town, this was crazy to me.
Right.
And so I can't recall ever seeing Brian do anything like that. But there was so much of it around that, like, it just, if there's 500 beautiful women in your face, do you really start to see the boobs?
Yeah, I got you. So did that sour you on the business at all? You knew you go in these locker rooms, you're seeing a guy doing blow, who knows what else is going over in the corner. You're like, man, it's not the world I want to be in. No,
because I knew I wasn't going to be doing
as long as it had nothing to do.
It's, I didn't do that whenever I was in high school. I didn't do it in college. I drank. I enjoyed drinking, having a good beer now and then, maybe something a little stronger. But you caught on really quickly as a kid in the business. Like when I was in WWF in 1990. The bars were always packed because as soon as the wrestlers would get there, 9,000 fans would come in behind. And I remember I was walking through the beer one day, and I felt somebody hit my beer like that. I looked at it, my beer was fizzing. And I looked, and somebody had thrown something in my beer. Like, that's so you learn real quick to put your thumb over your beer
Right.
and
Oh,
walking around. It was,
wow.
yeah, it was a really
Any
days.
any thoughts on Brian Pillman Jr.?
Yeah, I've seen him wrestle a few times.
He's got his dad's look. I was like,
Yes,
oh
he
my
does.
God, please, Vince.
Yeah,
Will
yeah.
someone give him the
does.
chance? Because Pillman to me is one of the greatest missed opportunities in my mind in the
I
history of
agree.
the business, and you too, because I wanted to see the belt on you in the major companies as besides ECW. That's a whole nother story. I'm angry at them. They blew
Brian,
it.
I've seen Brian a handful of times, and I've spoken with him. In fact, before he went to up to training up with Lance Storm, he got a message to me, and I called him. We spoke for some length of time one night.
I would assume he's looking to speak to you.
Yeah, and he he basically wanted to know, like, do you think my dad would approve of this and that sort of thing. Seems like a damn nice kid.
Sure seems like so far so good too.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
man,
Keep
I hope it
keep
works
on
out.
the path he's on. Don't rush it. Don't try to get there too fast.
Who's his sensei, if I can ask? Who's watching over him? to
Well,
bring-
Lance Storm was where he trained. I'm sure.
Okay, is he
and-
still like staying with him as he's?
I would imagine Lance is that kind of guy. I'm sure that he gets quite up. But again, with what I saw with Brian, the handful of times that I've been on shows with him or been around him, he's talking like I had Danucci the same time we were here before we went to another show, and he was talking to Dominic and getting wisdom from Dominic, and smartest he can do.
Yeah.
If anybody's been around the business for a long time, you're going to learn something from them.
He's tapping into where he should be tapping into.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, at one point, obviously, comes what my favorite portion of your career. You leave for ECW. Can you tell us any early interactions with Paul, how that came down? And this is, in my mind, where you became a heel. Did you develop this heel style on your own, becoming the franchise that we know and love so well in ECW?
Well, Eddie Gilbert was, again, comes back into play here,
Another
right?
great one.
Because he had given me my original break in the business, I always had a real respect and affinity for Eddie. I liked Eddie, and I trusted him. And he called me. This was after I had, when Ricky and I had dropped the belts, but it wasn't Ricky and I. It was Ricky and I think Tom Zank or Brad Armstrong. They had two people playing the Dos Hombres. It was Ricky and sometimes Tom Zank, sometimes Brad Armstrong. I was off. I had a shoulder scoped, and the whole way they did that belt drop just looked so unprofessional and cheesy that it just put a really bad taste in my mouth. Like, why can't you wait for 2 or 3 weeks till I get back and we'll drop the belts the right way? That I decided then I'm just going to get out of the business and start to use my degree now. Go to Harrisburg, go to Washington. And Eddie called me. I was teaching. Was I teaching yet? Yeah, I was teaching school at Beaver, Pennsylvania. And Eddie called and offered me this position to come in for this new company, Eastern Championship Wrestling. And I thanked him and turned him down. And it wasn't like a ploy to get more money or anything. It was like an alcoholic staying out of a bar. I just wanted to stay as far away from the business as I could. And he kept calling back and sweetening the offer, and $50 more, $75 more, this, that, promising me this, promising me that, and it was like 6 or 7 phone calls. And I said, Eddie, I love you and I appreciate it, but I just really have no desire to stay in the business anymore. And he said to me, how about if we gave you the lead heel role? And I had always said that I wanted to learn all aspects of my business before I got out. And back then, as you guys I'm sure remember, blonde-haired, blue-eyed guys weren't heels. You had to have a wart on your chin and beer belly out to here, and then you could be a bad guy. So that intrigued
That'd make me a bad guy.
Yeah, that's what makes you a bad guy.
Oh my God!
But that intrigued me. That got a little bit of a hook in me. And
Yeah.
I thought, well, we'll go do this, and I really honestly thought that ECW would be a 1, 2, maybe 3 month thing, and done. In fact, the first day we flew out there for the first set of events, Terry Funk and I were picked up at the airport at the same time, and as we were going back to the hotel, he always called me Shano. He said, well, Shano, how long do you think we'll ride this train before it runs off the tracks? Little did any of us know what would happen. Within a few months, there was a falling out between Todd and Eddie we're at a production meeting one day, and Eddie goes out and talks to Todd for a while and comes back in and said, "I'll be right back." I think he's going to the bathroom or get a drink or something.
Now, for the fans out there, Todd's Todd Gordon, right?
Yeah, that was it.
That's Commissioner Gordon.
Eddie quit, was gone, and that's when he made Paul, who was Eddie's assistant. When he came to me, Eddie's incarnation of the heel for me was the fabulous one, Shane Douglas, and a takeoff on the Memphis stuff that he had seen as a kid. Paul came to me and had this idea for a character, call it the franchise, because that was the first year the NFL was naming a franchise player per team. And he said, well, it'd be the franchise. And I said, well, what do you see this character being? And he said, you're the captain of the football team who steals everybody's girlfriend and fucks her.
Nice.
I said, well, I can play it. I
like that role. That's a good role.
That guy,
That's funny.
Woo! But that's where the whole character came from.
Nice. Now let's get on to, to me, the defining moment of ECW's company history and of the franchise. You go on to defeat Too Cold Scorpio in this tournament for the NWA title. And then you do, and I'm sitting there watching this. I'm like, what is he doing? And then you actually take the belt, you point to the sky, you mention your dad, and you take it and you throw it in the garbage, and you declare yourself the new ECW World Champion. At this point, do you think, now, this turned out to be such a historical moment, but do you think at this point, I've made it, or are you still thinking WWE?
No, I wasn't thinking of it coming. I was hoping inside that this works, because if it didn't, it could really... put me in a bad light.
You get blacklisted for something like this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
but is part of you like, hey, look, I already have a teaching job. If I really blow this, really, I'll just go back to teaching, right?
I went back and forth in my head all week long. Should I do it? Shouldn't I do it?
Who approached you with this, please?
Paul. Paul called me. The only three people that were aware of it were me, Paul, and Todd. And what I always appreciated and respected about Paul's booking was he never came to me and said, this is what you're going to do. He would give me a set of options. You can do this, you can do this, whatever you think is best on the run, because I think he trusted my opinion and my input. And leading into that show, I kept going back and forth. I'm going to do it because, I'm not going to do it because, you're going through all the pros and cons in your head.
Did the history of the title itself trouble you when you were weighing this? Because
Absolutely.
I know how much you love wrestling. This title goes back to
this
Grandpa.
Right,
mean, come on.
This to me was
bigger
easy than the WWF belt. The NWA was the belt.
But you also hated Flair, so it was like kind of...
that had to be satisfying.
Yeah, that was,
think of it that way. Thank you.
That really didn't come into play.
Okay.
To me, the NWA was dead.
Right.
When I said it in the speech, that company had been dead for 7 years.
This is true. This is true. And that's sad in itself, but that's true.
But my dad, and the reason that was, I never planned on that. There was no line of that promo that was pre-written or preconceived.
So excellent.
And that's why I have to wait, because I'm blowing sky high. The building was hotter than hell. I certainly knew all the NWA, not all of them, but I knew a bunch of the NWA champions, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm so blown up and dry, and I got this promo to cut, and I'm naming names, and all of a sudden the audience starts spitting out names, which made it, I hate to use the word, but it made it so organic, because it looks like we're all working on this thing together.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad used to always tell me, God, it seemed like every time I was around him, he would say this, son, you can walk with your feet on the ground like everybody else. You can soar with the eagles.
Ooh, that's nice.
And I never knew what the hell he meant by that as a kid. I'm like, okay, Dad, whatever you say.
It's so deep. I love it.
Didn't get it.
Oh my God.
That's great.
That moment, my
Whatever
dad
you
had
say.
died the previous year. That was August of '94. August of '93, my dad had died. And when I stopped and I said, here we go, Dad, that popped into my head.
That's great.
Walk with the feet on the ground or soar with the eagles. And I knew that was the big quandary to me. Like, do we become part of the NWA and help try to re-resurrect it? Or do we go our own way? And that, to me, it was the first time in my life, like, Dad's words now make perfect sense to me. We can be the safe one.
Right.
Or we can take a chance and do some great shit.
Yep. And you did.
And
it was worth every second of it. You go on eventually to form the faction with Chris Benoit. Did you see any issues with him back then? I mean, who could see? You did. What sort of warning signs? Because I got to be honest, if I can say so, when this happened, if you had asked me, if you had said to line up the entire company, and who would do this, he would have been the last one for me. Maybe because he was the quiet one.
Yeah.
Is it true what they say? Watch out for the quiet ones. What did you see that tipped you off?
Well, me and Chris and Bam Bam they were literally like brothers. In my head, Chris was my little brother, Bam Bam was my big brother, and in large part because Bam Bam always called me Troy. My mother and Bam Bam were the only people. My ex-wife called me Shane. Everybody called me Shane. So when that big bastard would walk in, hey Troy, just like my big brother, right? And
very big brother.
Yeah, very very big and agile brother.
Yeah.
But Chris, again, I don't want to seem like I'm, single anybody out because it was pretty well diffused through the dressing room of drugs there and the pressure to perform and all of that goes all in the same bowl of wax. But there were times that with Chris that he would either be up for long periods of time, always in great shape and always performed, never ever underperformed in the ring. It was like the alcoholic that can go to work and get do the 3 martini lunch and cut the big deal in the afternoon. Chris was an uber professional. Ate, slept, and breathed wrestling, and but there was a lot of that. I mean that was where the OxyContin for me started. It was a beast unto itself there because if you didn't perform to that level, and keep in mind with what we were doing there was a little bit edgier, a little bit more physical than what we had done in the other companies. At least I had done in the other companies. That now you can't just say, hey, hold on, time out, I need 6 months off to let this broken neck heal.
Did he ever share any troubles with you? Like, this is really getting to me, or the medications are too much, or I can't take the grind? Because this was one tough SOB in the ring. He was a machine.
Yeah.
I mean, did it ever wear on him? Did he ever go to his friends and say, listen, I'm troubled, or anything?
No. In fact, there were a couple times that I confronted him. We were at one show in particular, and I walked in, and he and Axel were doing something. And
Axel Rotten?
Yeah, and I got really ticked. Not like their big brother or anything, but we've got a show tonight, guys. This, we're pros,
right?
And but this was, as I'm saying that, the other thing's popped in my head. Like this was a well-known and permitted thing in the company. I got in trouble one time. Paul pulled me out of the dressing room and yelled at me after I had the elbow surgery. I took out a prescription bottle my doctor prescribed and took 2 Percocets. Paul sees me as I'm taking him. He walks into the dressing room. He calls me out of the dressing room and he goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Took 2 Percocets, like it says." And he said, "You're the leader in that dressing room." He's like trying to give me this guilt complex. And we walk back into the dressing room. There's somebody over there snorting. There's somebody over there shooting. There's somebody over here smoking.
So you've been around. So we've had a lot of pro wrestlers come through our show, and it seems some like certain guys, some don't like certain guys. Here's my question for you: were there any guys that's like legitimately just scared you? Like you knew they were a ticking time bomb, and you just didn't want to be near them?
None that I was afraid of like that.
Okay.
But like there were guys like Barbarian and Meng.
Right. Don't mess with them.
Yeah.
Right.
But,
not recommended.
But we got along great. I mean, they,
right.
they were very professional with me, and I worked with them. We remain great friends to this day, but I would never have crossed them. I wouldn't intentionally try to piss either one of them off. There were other guys that I can't say that like anything ever happened, but more like on reputation. Like it was pretty well known that Dick Slater was a bad dude. Not bad like evil bad, like bad like badass bad. And guys like that, but same thing. Quiet in the dressing room. The quiet guy that's.
But let me. So did look? Not everybody gets along. Did any wrestlers have a hard on for you? Like they just didn't like you for whatever reason?
Yeah, I think we saw a lot of that in WWF.
We're getting to that, so we're getting to that.
I want to get this. I do want to ask this. With all these drugs going on in multiple companies, you saw it in multiple locker rooms. Let's be real here. How much of it did Paul Heyman know was going on? How much of it did Vince McMahon was going on? Did they come in and play dumb? I mean, they had to know something's going on in the locker room, right?
Well, I'll answer the question with
Oh,
a
boy.
question. So you have.
Oh, he's gonna with a question. I'm doomed. Go on, Dean.
You can't.
I give it to Dean Douglas right now.
You couldn't right now. I couldn't just go to a WWF building and get into the dressing room.
Okay.
You'd have to have a pass. Somebody'd have to let you in. That sort of thing.
Fair.
So if you had like in Harris or Hershey, where I would see nurses walking in with brown grocery bags full of stuff
Are you hearing this?
and giving it out to wrestlers in the dressing room. And I started thinking, like, wait, am I supposed to get one? Where's my
brown bag?
What's in the bag? Obviously somebody let that person in. But when you're in a position like that, you're obviously going to be smart enough to have plausible deniability, right? If you're Tony Soprano, you're not going to say,
Listen,
"Hey,
mate, listen. Let's get
I'm in the
realistic.
mall."
The NFL, Major League Baseball, they all didn't know what was going on.
I don't know what's going on.
And again, it's
That
about
just makes me
about
laugh.
money and selling
Right.
tickets, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
And if something's going to keep someone going longer, then
Yeah, and look,
by
this
all
is-
means, go ahead.
This is not a mea culpa for anybody, but our industry, especially as was back then, 340, 350 days a year on the road, wrestling 30, 40, 50, 55 minutes a night, driving halfway across the country, sometimes flying halfway around the world to get to wherever it is you're going. It's physically impossible. I don't care if you have an S on your chest. It's physically impossible to do that for any prolonged period of time. Like I told the FBI agent that called me to ask me about the Benoit debacle, tragedy. He made some kind of a comment like, by the way, the guy's listening, you're a jackass. He said, well, it's tough to feel sympathy for you wrestlers. After all, you make millions of dollars, you live a lavish lifestyle, you take drugs and you die.
Wow.
And so I think, the same type of thing, like this question from the outsiders, the civilians that say, why all the drugs and stuff? Well, again, this is not a mea culpa for anybody or a trying to defend anything. It's just stating what it is.
Right.
When you're going out and doing that long, you have most of the guys that I knew in the business, certainly the ones that drew money, almost without fail, 100% of them have an incredible amount of pride. Have an incredible work ethic and drive, and they have an insatiable desire to deliver the goods to the fans, not let their fans down. So if you go out and you're working, back then we were 27, 28 days out of the month, and you're 3 weeks away from getting home for 2 or 3 days, and you just broke something or pulled something or ripped something. So you can go out there and sort of half-ass it and take it really easy. Or you can take something that helps you perform to the level you think the fans expect you to.
I almost feel like you're forced to, because if you half-ass it, you could lose your spot on the card.
Well, so we're coming up to WrestleMania, right? Exactly right, because we're coming up to WrestleMania. I've heard Ricky Steamboat talk about, $250,000, $500,000 payoffs. Most wrestlers will get into that position if they're lucky once in their career. And most won't even get into those positions. So if you've spent the last year working on this angle, you and I are in an angle, and we're right there. We're 3-4 weeks out of WrestleMania, and I dump you on your head and break your neck. Are you really going to go to the boss and say, "Hey, boss, I can't wrestle"?
No.
Because if you do, you're going to get tagged with you're injury prone or you're unreliable.
Yeah. I'm going to go to you and say, Shane, we need a doctor quick.
Yeah.
Don't tell anyone.
Absolutely. It just is what
I
it is.
understand.
Did you have a relationship with Nancy Benoit at all?
We weren't real close, but I knew her fairly well. Yeah.
Because she was in WCW, I think, when you were at WCW.
Yeah, ECW. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, does it even hurt worse when something like a tragedy like that happens? But I guess if you weren't that close with her.
This was.
Dean Malenko put it best. He said that because it's to this day it doesn't make sense to me. Chris was every time I was around him, was a pretty laid back, calm. I never heard him raise his voice. I saw him get threatened with a Bowie knife, and he never. I was on the phone. I went.
Yeah, I don't understand.
What's happening? He goes, it was just Mike. Just like wouldn't have lost his mind like most of us would. So I went. Next time I saw Dean, I said, "How do you balance this? Like, how do you qualify this?" And he said, "The only people that know what happened in that house are gone, and the rest of it's just going to be speculation. So don't drive yourself nuts
Right.
over it. I guess that really is because, honest to God, if Chris Benoit had called me 30 seconds before I got the phone call from Donna Seaman as to what happened, and asked me to put my kid on a flight to go down and play with Daniel, I would have.
Wow.
Without hesitation, without question, would have sent my son down there to play with Daniel. So just one of those things that's never going to add up, never going to make sense. It's the same, real tragedy.
All right, let's get off of this and let's go to your time in the WWE. You returned to WWE as Dean Douglas.
Yeah.
How do you come up with that gimmick?
They did.
Who? Vince? Directly?
Vince is a very qualified creative department. They had my resume, and they were in a boardroom. They're sitting around this long table. They're all looking at my resume like they're reading the secrets of the universe. This is pretty interesting. And they had me take my shirt off, and they asked me to turn slowly. So I'm standing just turning around in a circle with my
Feeling
shirt
nervous
off,
yet?
and thinking like this is
People
like
up to?
yeah, pretty odd, right?
Yeah,
Standing in
what
front
is
of a room
this?
full of
All of a sudden
guys
you feel a
and,
little tickle from behind.
yeah,
What is
like,
going
yeah,
on
right.
here?
Yeah. Nothing like that, but it was really strange, and that's where they came up with, oh, he's been a teacher. Oh, I know. Let's make him the world's smartest.
Did your stomach
man.
drop
So,
when you heard this? Did your stomach drop? A teacher? What was
no,
your thoughts when they presented this to you?
When it was first presented to me, it was presented as a professor, college professor.
Okay.
And I knew I could make that work.
Yeah.
More of an old school, like the throwback to what characters used to be in wrestling, that kind of thing. And instead, there was one day in particular when, before I'd gone on the road, I was doing the vignettes. And I would fly up every Sunday and we would shoot 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of these things all day. Drive you nuts, boring. And when we first talked about it, I was told that I would be able to give legitimate grades, A, B, C, D, F. That they would send me the tape, I would watch the tapes, and then I would identify what was supposed to be pointed out. The reason Vince told me he wanted this character was that everybody was making amateur mistakes. Like Bret Hart would only grapevine the leg when it was a real finish. Every other time it was a false finish, he would never grapevine the leg. Little things like that a trained eye could see that the fan might not be able to see and identify, but they know something's not right. Or they'll know when they see him grapevine the leg, oh, he's going to win.
Right.
So it takes something away from the finish. And so it was sort of a way, the way Vince explained it to me, like to nudge the guys, like, hey guys, let's tighten our work up. And do it in a way with a guy who's qualified enough to do it and not step on any toes.
He used your gimmick for real life issues with his roster.
Yeah.
This is interesting.
That is pretty interesting.
This is really interesting. Go on.
But what that became, though, was on that Sunday, like I said, it was boring because he wanted me to talk in that monotone voice and never raise my voice and never lower my. And I was known for some of the inflection and fire in my promos.
Oh yeah.
And this was driving me nuts.
Yeah.
So after like the fourth or fifth one, plus costume change, hair change, glasses change, there was a lot of time doing these things. After 4 or 5 or 6 of them that day, I was so bored. I said, Vince, can I do that last one again? I'll use the exact same verbiage, just a little bit different delivery. And I did it as the franchise, laughing and pounding my fist on the podium. And right as I finish up and getting ready to ask him, he gets called out of the room on a phone call. While he's out of the room for 15, 20 minutes. As he's out of the room, now the room has Michael Hayes was in there, Stan Lane was in there, Jim Ross was in there, 2 or 3 camera guys, 2 or 3 lighting techs, sound techs, the hair and makeup girls. There was, 15 people in the room. I went around the room and asked everybody in the room, which way did you think? Michael Hayes was the first I asked because I always respected Michael's mic skills. And he said, I can tell you, that last one was fucking hot. Well, I knew that I knew it. I felt it already, but now hearing him say that.
One of the greatest talkers ever.
Yeah.
Michael
Went
Hayes.
around the room, and everybody in that room, Jim Ross included, said that last one was compelling.
JR.
So he comes back into the room. He's got his glasses down, he's got a cup of coffee. I said, well, Vince, what'd you think? He said, well, he's leaning against the desk, like he's, again, pondering the secrets of the universe. He said, I appreciate what you were trying to do, but
The glasses.
I think I liked my way better. What's everybody else think? And everybody in that room.
I like your way too, Vince.
Oh,
And I remember looking around and I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
you fucking asshole.
Like,
But Michael, what are you talking about, dude?
Yeah.
Don't get me involved.
Right.
And
I didn't say nothing.
it was that day that I knew I had to get the hell out of there.
Oh, that's
Wow.
Because like this is
like right away,
Well,
basically.
yeah.
well.
Oh my God.
Before you get out of it, so you're not happy, right? I get it.
You shouldn't be.
But here comes the time you're going to become Intercontinental Champion, one of the great belts of all time, held by Greg Valentine, Don Morocco,
Yeah.
Pat Patterson. The list is long.
Pedro Morales, he was ready for any kind of action.
How do you find?
It's true.
Boy, I hated Pedro. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
we hated Pedro.
I hated Pedro.
We were heel guys. Obviously,
Boy,
you were
oh
one
boy.
of our faves. So
How do you find out you become Intercontinental Champion? And when you were here in June, we had a private. You were telling us a private
you
story.
told us the story.
And I know
Please tell
you
it
probably
again.
told the story, but we'd love to hear this story because it's probably one of the most incredible wrestling
how you were
stories I've ever
told
heard.
you're going to win
Yeah.
the title.
Well, Vince had already talked to me and Shawn, and we knew that's where it was going. He told us that he wanted a repeat of the Rick Rude Ultimate Warrior angle, where I would go over for the Intercontinental belt, and then 6 months later at WrestleMania, it would be Chin Music for the world title, and he would go over. So I was in Germany for the 3 weeks leading up to that in your house. And
So wait, not just to cut you off. At this point, are you still like, I still got to get the F out of here? Or are you like, wait a minute, things are turning. I'm a little happier.
no, I mean, I knew I had to get out of this because it was such a wacko land. Plus,
Okay.
the money was
Wacko
the
land.
drizzling shits.
It was bad.
drizzling shits.
Really?
Okay.
Drizzling shits.
Oh.
Like $1,600 for 4 months' work.
Holy shit.
Yeah, that kind of drizzling
well,
shit.
he's
And
trying to
are you
ponder
with
the
your-
meaning of the universe.
And
You
your
want him
and
to
your
be
ex,
you?
and your
Yeah, yeah.
ex-wife is like, you get out of this shit.
Yeah, no,
Go
she's
back
like,
to teaching.
God, yeah.
My ex-wife, who rarely swore, her exact quote was, "Where the fuck's our money?"
Nice.
Don't blame him.
Yeah, and
blame
when
him.
she told me what those checks amounted to, so I knew I had to wrap up and get out of here. But then, like, it was, you can't just go say you got a 2-year contract or 3-year, whatever it was at the time. So just looking, to where would be the right time to get out. So I'm in Germany, as is Hunter and I think Kevin and Scott and Hunter were in Germany with us. Shawn was back here, and pretty uneventful tour. Everything went well, and we come back. Shawn and I had already been told that we had to be in Regina, Manitoba, the week of, like that Tuesday before the In Your House, because it would be me, him, and Vince. Vince wanted to go over and create a finish for this, and that's what he told us, that there was going to be a repeat of the Rude Ultimate Warrior angle. And while we're in Germany, we get the report that Shawn's been attacked by, beaten up by, like, I forget.
40.
Yeah, it was like
40 U.S.
45
Army soldiers.
Yeah, something like ridiculous.
3 angry Boy Scouts?
Yeah.
That's what it ended up being, but go ahead.
Through that lens, right? And so when I got back, Davey Boy called me. And I was home for maybe a day or two. And Davey Boy called. I can't remember if he called before J.J. Dillon. At any rate, Davey Boy calls and he said, "I just want to let you know, Shawn's been talking shit on you while you were in Germany." I said, "What's he been saying?" He said, "He's been telling everybody he's going to embarrass you on the pay-per-view." And I laughed. I said, "I'd love to see him try. I'll stretch his ass on the pay-per-view." And
At this point, did you have any problems with Shawn at all?
No.
Or so this is out of the blue.
other than the money being the shits and, the couple little things you can see, but it was nothing at that point yet targeted directly at me that I saw or heard.
Right.
And so I tell Davey that, and the very next day, I think it was the next day, the JJ called and said, "You're not needed in Regina on Tuesday now." And I was like, "Davey, get me knocked out of that spot? Did he stooge it?" And they said, no, it's nothing like that. He said, "Shawn's not going to be able to wrestle because he's had a relapse of his concussion." Well, again, I was accepted to medical school. I know you don't relapse a concussion unless you get hit in the head again. And I said, "Well, how the hell did he get hit in the head again?" So, he didn't get hit in the head again. He just had a relapse. And I went, okay, now this is all
The old
starting to line up.
relapse.
And
The old
old
concussion
relapse.
relapse.
He forgot to mention that his physicians were Dr. Howard, Dr. Fine, Dr. Howard, but that's a whole other story.
so the night before the In
my
Your House,
God.
I flew in last with Jim Cornette. We were on the very last flight into Regina. I get to the hotel. I'm rooming with Dustin, and I get into the room. There's a note on my bed. Everybody's down in the bar. So I put my stuff away, went down to the bar, and as I walk in, bar is packed with fans. I see over the top of the crowd somebody going like this. So I look, and it's Scott Hall waving me over.
Right.
I'm going like, that's like, okay. Because one thing about Scott was when he was drinking, like, boy,
Hey,
loose
Shane.
lips would sing every shit, right? So I went over and he's holding the seat for me, and he says, "Hey, Shane, Shawn can't wrestle tomorrow." And he's going, through the whole thing, and he said, "I just want to say congratulations." I said, "For what?" He said, "Well, you didn't hear it from me, but you're getting the belt tomorrow." And where I come from in the business, the way I was taught, why this guy knows anything outside of me, Vince, and Shawn don't work. It doesn't work in my world. But I knew that he's, there's something going on here now. So now I'm going to keep my eyes and ears open.
Are they the Click right now? Are they known as the Click already?
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't know if the name had stuck
But
at that time.
it's forming.
It's forming, and they were, at least there were certain people in the dressing room. Not everybody was calling them the Click.
They're not hugging at the Garden yet, ruining everything. Go on. Oh.
So the next day I pull into the parking lot to go in, and Shawn pulls in right next to me. Now, remember, we'd heard just not like a week or so ago, he's been brutally attacked by this platoon of soldiers. And he gets out of the car and he looks, there's not a scratch on him. He looks perfectly normal.
His toenails are flossed.
Yeah, I mean,
He's got sparkly
little
teeth.
sparkle off his tooth and he smiled. So we walk in and
It's in a bathrobe.
And
Hey, Shane,
the
wanna
dressing
go tan?
room, the locker room was this way, and the makeup room was this way. So we walk in, and I said something to him, walking in. I said, tough night in Rochester. Oh, yeah. And he walks into the makeup room.
That was great.
He walks into the makeup room, and I go into the dressing room, and I drop my stuff, and I'm going to get something to eat. And we almost like on cue. He's come out of the makeup room. Now he's got a contact lens in, and bruised up.
Oh, get that serious?
Yeah. And I said, "Boy, those makeup girls must be tough, huh?" Yeah. Snaps his gun again,
Oh, yeah.
So I'm down
greatest
in
imitation
catering,
ever.
and I get somebody, I forget who it was, Blackjack or somebody came in and said, "Vince wants to talk to you." So I go and find Vince, and what was odd was when I walked in, I had never seen this before, but I walk in and the dressing room is all dark. He's got the Regina.
Is there like one light bulb swinging in
Yeah,
the middle?
there was one say like, have you ever been in your gymnasium after the school's closed?
Yeah.
There's like one light in the locker room that's on.
You've been summoned.
Yeah. So I
Okay.
walk in and his desk is right in the middle of the thing under this, and he sits down and tells me to sit down. We sit down and start talking. He starts explaining to me why Shawn can't wrestle and but he really loves this and he really loves that. And he's going on and on. He goes, so at that point, Shawn's going to come out and he's going to forfeit the title to you. And I went, oh, please don't do that. He goes, why not?
Makes you
Like, real seriously, why not?
weak.
He said, I've heard every wrestling champion since I was a kid say, you'd have to pry this belt from my cold, dead fingers. I'll spill your blood. I'll rip your head off to take this belt off me. And let's get a little bump on the head, then I'll just hand it to you.
Right.
I said, I'm sure he can do a super kick. Have him super kick me and beat me, but don't do that. He goes, no, we're committed to that. And this talk is going on for like 45 minutes. He and I sitting across the desk,
Going back and
desk
forth.
talking back and forth. And he says, yeah, and he's going to, you come out there, you do one of those promos you're so famous for, and he'll come out and you take that belt off of him. And he said, and at that point, I'm looking at him, I'm going like, what's going on with his hand? So
What's he pointing towards?
So I start to slowly follow his hand, and I look over, and Scott Hall's sitting over here in a goddamn locker,
Hey, yo.
listening to the whole conversation.
Hell.
He
had him hidden in the dark in the corner?
Yeah, like, where's
Who
Rod?
hit the light where all of a sudden he appeared?
Yeah, well,
What
I
is
was
going
I was
on
waiting
here?
for Rod Sterling around in front to
That's
come
what I'm
out
saying.
because like,
That
we're in
guy
like
weird.
bizarro world shit now.
Oh my God. So what'd you do then at that point?
Well,
Now he's sitting there going like this. Vince has got his glasses down like
Yeah.
this. What are you doing?
Tells me you can come up with a finish. So my finish was I slide my foot under the bottom rope, which would break the count. The referee doesn't see it. He goes, I love that. I love it. Now you go back and watch that footage and see the announcers also don't notice it. It's like it never happened. But it was a very strange place to work.
Sounds it.
Not satisfying at all.
No.
Which must be disappointing because
Yeah.
it's like, this is where Dominic and Bruno came from.
Yes.
Vince is supposedly this great genius, which he is. I don't think we can say that, right? But it's got to be disappointing to someone whose career is a professional wrestler. That's the New York Yankees, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You spend your entire career endeavoring to get there. And then you get there and realize, shit, I'd rather be back digging ditches.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
This place sucks.
Do you ever laugh to yourself when you know, and I'm sure you have mucho respect for the indies. Do you ever laugh to yourself when you hear, okay, here comes the latest company that's going to take Vince down? Do you think Vince could be taken down is what I'm asking you?
Look, I think there's a lot of weakness in the product. When you see
That's fair.
97% of the audience hemorrhaged. But to be clear, in 2019, to start a wrestling company, to hire the wrestlers, as we're seeing AEW now, we're hearing all these crazy numbers come out. It's an exorbitantly expensive thing to do.
You think they got a shot partnering up with the cons?
The deep pockets are what's going to, if there's going to be a chance, it's going to require deep pockets.
Do you think that they'll recognize the one missing link from WCW? WCW had payroll, but they didn't have wrestling for life kind of people like Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
You think that they'll bring in some people, maybe people like yourself, people who really understand and love this business and put the pro wrestling, portion of it first. This way it will. Any shot there that they do that kind of thing?
They should.
They have the money. They're halfway home in my book.
I think for myself as a wrestling fan and growing up, watching wrestling, we're pretty much the same age. It's a watered down product, and to be realistic, to have. It's like the XFL trying to take on the NFL. It's too late. It's $1 short. It's too late, right? Yeah. So, and again, if the cons are as smart as I think they are, you're not going to pour a ton of money into this because you know what? It's probably a losing venture to some point.
Why get into it at all, though?
We were talking before on the way over here today, and my question, kudos to Cody and the Young Bucks and Chris and everybody for even getting this thing lined up right. Because a rising tide's going to rise all ships. We all remember WCW, ECW, WWF. Even though WWF was the king of that mountain, those other two companies did pretty damn well for a while. And created a lot of good product that drew, some people like vanilla, some like chocolate, and some like pistachio. There were all three companies in different flavors. So I think it's a great thing that they've been able to pull off to get these guys involved. But I'm on record already through my podcast as saying if that product looks like Ring of Honor, TNA, or WWE, the same advice I gave Dixie Carter: do not try to be WWE Light or WWE 2 because you're never going to out Vince McMahon. No. Let him be that product. You can't have 26 kicks to the head every match. You can't have 26 backflips every match. It's anticlimactic. When you read a book, even the greatest book ever written, you don't read chapter 1 over and over and over.
But doesn't this worry you, right? So back in the old days, right? Come on. Backlund, Morocco, right? These are great matches. Adrian Adonis, Buddy Rose. These guys are great wrestlers. Yes. Could you imagine a slowdown of an armbar for 3 minutes with this crowd?
Fans
they would boo you out of the ring.
They can't take it today. They have no attention span. They'll start chanting CM Punk.
Look, my boys are completely representative of their generation. They have, and I love them both dearly. Excuse me. Both good athletes, both very talented kids. But they have the attention span of a gnat. And the idea of them watching a 3-hour program like we all grew up doing, never going to happen. If you sat them down and make them watch it, even like my youngest son is a huge football fan, watches hockey, watches all the sports, but he doesn't watch it. He turns on YouTube or something afterwards and watches like a 5-minute compilation to watch the whole game.
So there's where you hit on the head. We're internet broadcasting here, right?
Yeah.
It's not must-see TV, but guess what? This is towards your boys' generation, my daughter's generation, right? Not a long attention span. Yep. Can jump on at any time they want, watch it in bits and pieces, and this is why cable. Cable will be dead. Maybe we'll be dead before cable's dead, but that's the way it's going to end up going. Look, we got a few minutes left. I just want your thoughts on a few names and, you could elaborate the best of your ability. Bill Watts.
Creative creative genius with bully tendencies. I respect Bill so much. I learned so much from him, but I can understand why he was the bully he was, because he had his own personal money into this company, trying to go national against Vince. And you might be better at explaining something than him, and he might be better or worse than somebody else. Bill might not have been the best messenger for delivering a message, but boy, if he delivered a message and you listened to it, you probably learned something from it. Brilliant guy.
Ric Flair.
Best ever.
Wow.
Chris Candido.
An incredible wrestler who made it look effortless. I used to get jealous watching him because he'd be over in the corner dead asleep, having been up half the night last night, and hey Chris, you're up in 5 minutes. And he'd jump up and put his boots on and go out there and have a 5-star match.
Right.
Not talk anything, and it was like a fish taken to water. Chris made it look so easy.
Were you good friends with Chris?
Oh, very. Yeah.
So did it bother you with the whole crap that used to go on with the Click and Sonny and
Yes.
the games they played? I mean, how did you restrain yourself there? Maybe you could elaborate on that whole deal.
It was clear that Chris wasn't going to take it to that point. So if he's not going to take it to the point, why I can't go? If I do, I'm going to make him look like a bitch that he didn't. I'm going to put undue heat on myself.
Did you ever talk to him and go, dude, what,
Yes.
come on, man,
Yeah.
for yourself,
Yeah.
whether she's that important to you or not, do something about it.
Yes.
And what do you say to you?
Chris used to always have this thing like a little brother off franchise, just like sort of blow it off, and it's. I
Sounds
just
to
don't
me
believe-
like he just wasn't a nasty guy and he didn't want to play in nasty land.
right.
That's what it sounds like to me.
To me, like on the flip, like the other side of the coin, how do you treat other human beings like that?
Yeah.
Like, how do you look
Yeah.
yourself in the mirror in the morning and say, "Hey, I'm a great guy," after I, pulled all this shit on so many other people? I don't know. I couldn't.
This is a testament to you as a human being, right? So, I mean, I'm not saying you would have done it or could have done it. Well, you could have done it, but you're done with the WWE. You already know you want to get out of there. You certainly can't stand Shawn Michaels. Now he's doing stuff to your very good friend. You could have took liberties in the ring, and you could have ended that dude's career. You could have just finished him off, went off to wherever you wanted to go, and your career would have ended up exactly as it is now, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
you're established superstar basically through ECW and WCW. Great. To me, you were a great WWE star. I loved you, but we know, that's a testament to who you are. Because I don't know, you could have took him out.
There were times it did get tough to constrain. For me, like I used to when I'd come off the road, I'd be in a really bad mood, and I told my ex-wife, it's not you, it's not even the road, I'm mentally exhausted, because the only way I could go on the road for that 12 days or 15-day run was I would shift into franchise mode and play that character 24 hours a day until I would be in the car driving from the Pittsburgh airport back to my home. And it was exhausting. That was the only way I could do it, and not lose my mind and go for somebody's eyeball. Because these guys, and it wasn't just me they were doing it to. They were doing it to a lot of guys in that dressing room. Guys who were just there trying to make a living to feed their damn families.
It's cruel. It's bull.
Vince had to be
ridiculous.
aware that his
Of course
boys
he
were
was.
doing this crap.
Well, speaking of that, Vince McMahon,
Successful.
good human being.
Come on, franchise, spit it out.
Let's be honest here. I'm going to play the Vince McMahon side deal here, okay? Because as a leader of a company myself, or as a business partner myself, you can't let the Indians run the ship, and you have to have control. So, and sometimes you have to make a stand, right? It's me or you. So it's like, guess what, Shane? To be honest with you, I want all the money, and if you're willing to work for $1,600 a month, that's your problem, not mine. You can go wherever you want, right?
Yeah, to some extent, except Like my contract when I was there said I could work for any other entity in the world, which I guess made me an independent contractor, except WCW, ECW, New Japan, All Japan. Like it was
Oh, is
listed
that
all
all?
the companies that you could make a living at.
Oh boy.
Which, by the way, is utterly ridiculous. At this point, I don't understand how that independent contractor stuff even holds up anymore.
Right.
But well, there's nowhere else to really work anymore anyway. But when back then, it's like, yeah, you know what? You're an independent contractor. Now they could turn around and say, hey, look, go play in WCW, but when you come back here, Dean Douglas, I don't think I got anything for you.
Right.
Right.
And that was fine for me. I knew when I was walking out that door that I was never going to work for him again, because in my experience, it's almost universal. If you lie to me once, you've sure as hell lied to me before, and you'll lie to me again. Like I said, almost universal it is in the damn altruism. So why would I want to go to work for a guy who'd already starved me once? And trust him. What this time with a pretty please and a cherry on top? You're gonna treat me nice this time.
Right.
No thanks. It's
Well, on the other hand, did
No love lost.
Paul ever stiff you, Paul Heyman?
yeah.
So
But Paul also gave me the opportunity. I made money. I made a good living there for 7 years, and I made what will be remembered from my career from
Your
that
mark.
company.
Yep.
So he didn't micromanage me there. I remember when I was there in WWF the first time or the second time with Dean Douglas, and I went down to do a vignette or a promo, and I'm used to looking in like here into a lens, right? And I'm looking at the teleprompter of myself looking back at me, which makes wait, is my hair better this way or what's my good side? You get real self-conscious.
No, I look.
that's like you,
marvelous.
Miller.
And then
That's ticked up. The only guy not on camera.
And the guy starts giving the time countdown, right? And all of a sudden I see words going up, and I went, stop. What is that? I said, that's your promo. I went, after Vince, I said, I don't need a fucking promo written for me. I'll do it. They took the teleprompter down, but I don't agree with the product, how they do that. We talked about that earlier. If you have somebody that can't do a promo, have that person read the teleprompter.
Yeah.
Because when you find those handful that become good at it, they'll create magic. Right. I don't think we've seen any magic being created up there in some time.
No, I think it's got out of control.
Very
I want to
plastic.
bring in Eric Sims from ESS Promotion. Eric, come on to a microphone, brother.
Where do you want me to
Come
go?
this way to the Pharaoh side, please.
I hope you brushed this morning.
There's a little heat going on between these
Oh,
two.
there's not. Would you stop?
It's legit heat.
Eric,
It's not legit.
Eric,
He's
you
probably
know,
going to do a terrible
Fa-
imitation now.
Farrell.
You were something before electricity.
I'm a martial arts guy.
Last time I saw a mouth like that, I had a hook
and I
in it.
need to practice my chokehold.
Martial
You better
arts.
get your hands
so
off
if you're
me.
Martial arts one. Be a martial.
All right, all right.
This guy. That's it. Say goodnight, Gracie. Say
I've
goodnight.
had enough fighting in the
Say
studio
goodnight,
today.
Gracie. Say it.
All
I'm
right,
not fixing the studio again.
Eric, what do you got coming up, big
Oh
guy?
my
See,
God!
just take
And he
this.
broke my useless chain. Get off my wrist before
Sit
I
down.
remove your thorax.
Sit down.
Oh my
All right,
God!
what do you got going on, man?
He knows what that is. He knows what's going on.
We had this great interview. Now it's out
Where's
of
my
control.
sunglasses?
Wherever you put, wherever you, they're underneath the table there, buddy,
My gimmick, bro.
buddy boy.
All right, what do you got?
Buddy boy.
ESS, Eric Sims. what
Anyway,
do you
no
got?
BS. It's your cult hero ESS. Tonight, what's today? The 26th of June, SWF Live in Parlin, New Jersey.
Right.
Shane Douglas is the headliner there. He's in a big ambulance match with Brandon Kirk tonight. So if you're at the ambulance squad over in
I forgot to
Parlin,
mention,
Sayreville,
I'm
New
going to
Jersey.
be in the ambulance the way this day's going.
Exactly. So show up over there, Parlin, New Jersey. The SWF Live show. It's a fun night with that crew, guys. Let's see what's going on.
This is why tigers eat their young.
Ron Simmons comes in for me next month in February. It's Ron Simmons month. I got 2 dates with him on the the 16th. Yeah, right, the 16th and the 23rd.
We're pretty good together.
SWF on February 8th, Totowa, New Jersey with the Tommy Dreamer. The 23rd, SWF Live, Barnegat, New Jersey with Ron Simmons. We're back here, that's right. ESS is back here with Monte and the Pharaoh.
You did brush.
March 9th. And that's, I got big event during the day.
I got a big event, but we won't talk about that.
And we got the special guest appearance with Too Cold Scorpio and making his first appearance back here in about 10 or 15 years. Billy Jack Haynes, a very rare act.
Yeah,
so
we're
going to be back with that. And for all the upcoming stuff, and Tito Santana will be here at the end of March.
Tostitos!
Arriba, right.
Sorry.
So for all that information, www.esspromotions.com. And remember, it's no BS with ESS.
Shane, one last question, then I'll end with
not
my
listening,
comment.
I'm not.
Forget about your relationship with the WWE.
Yeah.
Are you a Hall of Fame wrestler?
Yes.
No.
What?
Wow.
How dare you?
No, I'll tell you why.
Good.
Guys
depressing.
like Ivan Koloff, Dominic DeNucci, and so many countless others that are not there. If they ain't there, I sure as hell shouldn't be there.
That is so friggin' cool.
Yeah, but
Honestly.
he's so freaking classy.
No,
But I mean
that's
that.
classic.
I do mean that. Thank
I,
you. But
I got to tell you
You're a Hall of Famer,
personally
bro.
from my
Sorry.
end, you are a Hall of Famer, and those gentlemen that you named are also Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
But not only you are a great wrestler, you were a great wrestler, and more importantly, you're a great human being. And I thank you for coming in.
Thanks, guys, for having me. I mean, it's easy Saturday afternoon. No chair shots.
Says the
you
guy
two
who didn't
fighting
have to
around
fight
over there.
anybody
Yeah.
today. I'm so tired.
Shane Douglas has been an ESS guy for many, many, many years.
Well, I'll tell you what,
I've been an LSD guy
unbelievable
for many
human
years.
being.
Let's not
I mean,
get-
Miller, you got
we can see
anything
that.
to say before we send it off?
Shane is always welcome here. He is my favorite of everyone you bring in.
He does rave
a
about you
class
from time to
act,
time.
Yeah, he does.
100%.
Appreciate it,
man.
brother.
And it's really refreshing to see in a business that's not that refreshing.
That's true.
Be honest, you want my opinion?
He truly is the franchise.
I get it. Yeah.
You're right. You're hilariously right.
All right, I want to tell the fans out there, thank you for joining us. Catch us again every Thursday from 8:05 to 9 p.m. We're only here at Village Connection Radio at Rockstar Studios.
So let me see. So if
Hold
I
on,
do
I got
like
broken
this,
chains.
and I just.
I'm trying to get off the air here. All right,
trying
have
to
a
get
good one.
off
Thank you,
there.
Mr. Douglas.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Later.